Hello, and thanks for checking out the Wheel Reinvention Jam submission for MetaDocs. In this project, we were trying to improve the auto-documentation process for C so that you could attach documentation text of any syntax to the symbols in your code, as the functions, the types, and so on. And you would get that in a format that you could output HTML or PDF files in a way that suited you. So to do this, we used clang with the ast-dump equals json option, which can take documentation in this format. So you can see that it's got the Doxygen-like indication that text is actually documentation as opposed to just a regular comment. This is our test file. We're then running it with we run clang ast-dump equals json on this test file and output a JSON file, and then we run our MetaDocs program on it. So the ast file from clang looks something like this. We have these objects, with most of which, but not all, have IDs, and then many of them have children. So you end up with a tree structure for the most part. There are some exceptions to that, which have been interesting. Now, we made a good amount of progress in this jam. Unfortunately, I only had a couple of days to work on it in the week, so it didn't actually end up finishing, but I'll show you where I got to. So we've taken this file, got the AST for it, and then let me go to the top here. We basically turned this into a I initially started with operating directly on the JSON, but this ended up being a pretty poor idea because so many of the things that you need to refer to haven't been defined yet if you're just going top to bottom. So instead we are turning this into a binary format that we understand with all the information that we need, and then we turn from that representation of this JSON AST into a structure that is better suited for documentation. So if I run down a little bit, we'll start getting to some dumping of the basic information that we've got. Each of our nodes has both the structure children and also a potential list of documentation attached to it. So it's very easy to walk the tree and then find any documentation attached to a particular node. So for instance, we've got our struct data here, we've got some documentation attached to it, and then you can see that indented as children here, we've got all of the fields, each with their own documentation attached. So one of the things that the next process, of course, after turning it into a useful format is to turn it into the actual output that you want. And this is where I basically ran out of time. So we started putting out some not exactly typed but fairly generic approach of adding bullet points for things and attaching comments in a format that's, I guess, it's kind of somewhere in between ASCII doc and Markdown, to be determined later. But a couple of issues occurred. One thing that's missing is the primitive typing for stuff. So we have anything that has an identifier, we have a good way of linking to it, and we have IDs for the types that we've generated here, the user generation types, but the primitive types get attached in a slightly different way, and so it shouldn't actually be too much work. It's just adding a new path for those so we can make sure that that's accounted for. One thing I was actually pretty pleased with is the enum stuff. So there's, if we look in the AST, there are enum, we have constant expressions attached to our enums. And so we've got, so constant expression with a binary operator plus, and then, multiple things happen. So you can see all of these different enums have been generated with different operators, and so we basically went through and made sure that we could handle almost everything, and so we can actually evaluate the enums to their proper values as opposed to just telling you this string. I think that'll end up being both the string, the generating string, and the value, as when you have flags, it's pretty useful to know the components of that flag if you're ORing multiple bits together. So that was something I was happy with. Obviously missing types. We need to do better work scoping the types still. So currently we assume they're all globally scoped, but some of them will be scoped into other, let's see, this kind of thing. So when we've got, this one, when we've got types that are generated only for the inside of functions. And we also need to make sure we output function parameters slightly better. So the last thing, I think, the last major hurdle that needs going over is if we're helping users to, first of all, this needs to be output in a format that consumers can then convert easily into the output of their choice, as well as having an example output. The format, the difficult thing, which is kind of hard to do with language agnostic or syntax agnostic stuff, is linking between multiple things. So we've got this references data, and that the problem there is that it's mostly dependent on the syntax. So we can do some things to assist there, but I think that at some point that has to be handled by the user. I mean, the main thing there would be kind of for each keyword, if we've got function names that are referenced in text, we can have maps of from the function text from that text to the function, and then or any functions that get referenced, and then make sure that those links are bidirectional, so we can see what has been referenced by what, as well as what is referencing what, and then the consumer, the person who is converting from this format to the end HTML, doing this process, they get to choose which of those are actually useful links for them. So yeah, a partial success all in all. Made some progress, still more to do, but yeah. I think that's it. Thank you very much for looking at MetaDocs, and I'll catch you later. Take care, everyone.